The goblet shattered against the marble floor 3 feet from my head, spilling wine like blood across white stone. Emperor Kael Varos stood above me, face twisted in a sneer that turned every head in the victory hall toward the spectacle. His voice boomed across the vaulted chamber, silencing 1,000 lords and ladies mid-celebration. "This gutter-born wretch dares sit among us?" The chandeliers blazed overhead, each crystal catching the light of distant suns visible through the observation dome. I felt every eye on me, some pitying, most contemptuous, and tasted copper on my tongue where I'd bitten the inside of my cheek. But before I could rise, before I could apologize or flee, the Throne of Aethros began to glow. I should never have been there in the first place. "My name is Saren Vey, and I'm nobody, an orphan conscript from the metal foundries of Station Kairos, one of 10 billion faceless workers scattered across the Empire's outer systems. 3 months ago, I'd been pulling double shifts, melting down salvaged starship hulls. Then the conscription order came. The Empire needed bodies for the war against the Shroud, the encroaching void at the galaxy's edge that swallowed stars and left only silence. I went because refusal meant execution, and I survived because I was lucky, not skilled. The battle at Talgris Gate had been chaos. Our fleet commander, Admiral Senna, held the line when the Shroud beasts, things with too many limbs and eyes that burned like dying suns, poured through the rift. I'd manned a plasma cannon on a frigate called the Dawn's Echo, firing until my hands blistered, until the ship shook apart around me. When the rift finally collapsed, only 12 of our original 60 vessels remained. The Admiralty called it a victory. They called us heroes. They summoned the survivors to the capital world, Aethros Prime, for a feast in the Emperor's palace. I wore borrowed clothes, a stiff gray tunic that chafed my neck, boots 2 sizes too large. The other survivors mingled easily, officers and pilots from noble houses who knew how to navigate ballrooms as deftly as starfields. I stood near the back, clutching a glass of something sparkling, trying not to draw attention. The victory hall stretched impossibly high, walls lined with tapestries depicting ancient conquests. At the far end, the Throne of Aethros sat empty, a construct of crystalline alloy said to be older than the Empire itself, older than recorded history. It pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of blue light beneath its surface. Admiral Senna found me first. She was a stern woman with silver hair braided tight and eyes that missed nothing. She'd spoken to me twice during the battle, once to order me to the cannon, once to drag me onto an escape pod when the Dawn's Echo buckled. Now she clasped my shoulder, her grip firm. "You did well out there, Vey. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Her voice was low, meant only for me. I nodded, throat too tight to answer. She moved on, summoned by a cluster of generals near the Emperor's dais. That's when Kael Varos noticed me. He'd been holding court, entertaining a circle of sycophants with tales of his strategic genius, though everyone knew he'd watched the battle from orbit, safe aboard the royal dreadnought. His gaze swept the room, landed on me, and sharpened. He gestured to a servant, whispered something. The servant approached, bowed stiffly. "The Emperor wishes to know your name and station." I told him. The servant's expression flickered, surprise, then disdain, before he returned to relay the information. The Emperor laughed. It started as a chuckle, then built into something louder, crueler. Conversations died in ripples. "An orphan?" he called out, projecting to every corner of the hall. "A foundry rat seated among heroes." He descended from the dais, golden robes trailing, crown glinting. He picked up a goblet from a nearby table, swirled the wine, and hurled it. Glass exploded near my feet. "You mistake charity for worthiness, boy. This hall honors blood and merit, not scavengers who got lucky." My face burned. I wanted to vanish, to melt into the floor, but I forced myself to meet his eyes, even as my hands trembled. "I didn't ask to be here, Your Majesty." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I only did my duty." His smile widened, a predator's grin. "Duty? You pulled a trigger. A trained animal could do the same." He turned to the crowd, arms spread theatrically. "This is what our empire has come to, elevating dregs because we've grown desperate." Admiral Senna stepped forward, jaw tight. "That dreg held his post when others fled, Majesty. He saved lives." The Emperor waved her off, dismissive. "You coddle weakness, Admiral. It's why the Shroud advances." He turned back to me, and I saw something cold and calculating in his eyes. "Tell me, orphan, what do you know of lineage, of legacy?" I swallowed hard. "Nothing, sire. I know work and survival." He nodded as if I'd confirmed something. "Precisely, you know nothing." Then the throne ignited. Light erupted from its core, blinding white shot through with threads of gold and violet. The hall filled with a hum that resonated in my bones, low and ancient. Every guest stumbled back, shielding their eyes. The emperor froze mid-step, mouth open. The light coalesced into beams that shot outward, scanning the room, touching faces and chests in rapid succession. When a beam struck me, I gasped. Heat flooded my veins, not painful but overwhelming, like diving into a star. My vision blurred, filled with images, worlds I'd never seen, battles fought eons ago, faces both human and alien, all looking at me with expectation. The throne spoke, not in words, but in a voice that bypassed ears and settled directly into minds, reverberating through the hall. The heir is found. The blood of the first awakens. Every head turned toward me. The light around me intensified, forming patterns on my skin, runes that glowed and faded, ancient symbols I didn't recognize but somehow understood. They marked me, branded me, chose me. The emperor's face drained of color. Admiral Senna's eyes went wide, and I stood there, terrified and transfixed, as the throne's declaration echoed into silence. What did it mean? Blood of the first? What heir? The throne had been vacant for 3 centuries, ever since the last ruling dynasty fell in civil war. The Varos line had claimed it by force, but the throne itself never acknowledged them. It remained dark, inert. Now it blazed, and it called to me, a foundry orphan with no name beyond the one assigned by station clerks. The emperor's shock curdled into fury. He pointed a shaking finger at me, voice cracking. This is impossible, a trick, sabotage, but no one moved to seize me. The guards stood frozen, weapons lowered, staring as if I'd become something holy or monstrous. I didn't know what to do, so I did what I always did. I tried to survive. I bowed low, deeper than protocol demanded, and kept my voice quiet. I don't understand this, Your Majesty. The light flared again, cutting me off, and the runes on my arms pulsed in rhythm with the throne's glow. The connection was undeniable. The throne had chosen, and in that moment I realized my life had just become infinitely more dangerous. They locked me in a spire suite that night, gilded bars on a golden cage. The room was larger than any hab unit I'd ever occupied, with a bed soft enough to drown in and windows overlooking the capital's sprawl of towers and transit lanes. 2 guards stood outside my door, silent and unyielding. I paced for hours, mind racing. The runes had faded from my skin, leaving only faint tingling, but I could still feel the throne's presence, a distant hum at the edge of awareness, like a frequency I'd only just learned to hear. Admiral Senna arrived before dawn. She dismissed the guards with a curt order and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Exhaustion lined her face, but her gaze stayed sharp. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she asked. I laughed, bitter and short. "I didn't do anything." "The throne did. I'm as lost as anyone." She crossed to the window, arms folded. "The throne hasn't acknowledged a ruler since the Ascendant War. Scholars have debated its silence for generations. Some believed it was dormant, others that it was waiting. Apparently, it was waiting for you." I sank onto the edge of the bed, head in my hands. "That doesn't make sense. I'm nobody. I have no family, no history. The station logs list me as Foundling 47 Vey, assigned to the metal works because I was too small for the mines." She turned, eyes narrowing. "Then perhaps the records are wrong, or perhaps lineage isn't what we think it is." She paused, choosing words carefully. "The first heirs weren't chosen by blood alone. Legend says they were chosen by resonance, by something intrinsic to their spirit. The throne read you, Saren. It saw something." A knock interrupted us. A woman entered without waiting for permission, robed in deep blue, silver embroidery marking her as a keeper, one of the scholars who maintained the Empire's historical archives. Her name was Lirae, and her expression held a mix of awe and urgency. She carried a data tablet, its screen flickering with ancient texts. "Forgive the intrusion, but this cannot wait." She approached me, holding out the tablet. "The markings that appeared on you, do you remember their shape?" I nodded slowly. She tapped the screen, pulling up an image. "These are the sigils of Aethros, the written language of the first civilization, the ones who built the throne. They haven't been seen in over a millennium." She sat beside me, voice trembling with barely contained excitement. The throne was their arbiter, a construct designed to identify those capable of wielding the Aethros, the fundamental force binding the cosmos. It's not magic, not in the mystical sense, but a manipulation of reality's substrate. Only those with the latent capacity could be marked. I stared at the glowing symbols on the screen, each one eerily familiar despite never having seen them before. And you think I have this capacity? Lirae nodded. The throne confirmed it. What we don't know is why it remained silent for so long, or why it chose now to awaken. Admiral Senna's jaw tightened. Because the Shroud is advancing. The void horrors aren't random, they're a symptom of something breaking. The barriers between realms are failing. Lirae glanced at her, surprised. You know about the barriers? Senna's smile was grim. I've been fighting on the front lines for 20 years, Keeper. I've seen things that don't belong in our universe. The Shroud isn't just an enemy, it's an infection, spreading because the foundations of reality are crumbling. If the throne has awakened, it's because we're running out of time. The weight of their words settled over me like a collapsing star. I thought the battle at Talgris Gate was just another skirmish, one more desperate stand. But if Senna was right, the war was existential and the throne believed I had a role to play. I looked at Lirae, pulse hammering. Can you teach me how to use the ether? She hesitated. The texts are incomplete, fragmented, but there are references to training grounds, places where the first heirs learned to channel their power. The closest is on Valandra Station in the Outer Reach. It's considered a ruin now, abandoned for centuries. A commotion erupted outside, shouts, the clatter of boots. The door burst open and a squad of imperial sentinels stormed in, plasma rifles raised. Their captain, a hard-faced man with a scar bisecting his left cheek, pointed at me. Saren Vey, by order of Emperor Kael Varos, you are under arrest for sedition and fraudulent claim to the throne. Admiral Senna stepped between us, hand on her sidearm. Stand down, Captain. This man is under my protection. The captain didn't flinch. The Emperor's order supersedes your authority, Admiral. Move aside or be charged with treason. Time seemed to slow. I saw Senna's hand twitch toward her weapon, saw Lirae's eyes widen in alarm. The sentinels' rifles hummed, charging. I stood, raising my hands in a placating gesture, even as panic clawed at my chest. Wait, the word left my lips, and the runes on my arms flared to life, brilliant and sudden. The air crackled and an invisible force slammed outward from me, a shockwave that sent the sentinels sprawling, their rifles clattering to the floor. The captain crashed into the wall, gasping. I stood frozen, staring at my glowing hands, heart pounding. Admiral Senna recovered first. She grabbed my wrist, urgency in her grip. We're leaving, now. She pulled me toward the window, tapping her wrist calm. Dispatch, this is Senna. Emergency extraction, my coordinates. Authorization Omega 7. Within seconds, a sleek shuttle rose into view outside the window, hatch opening. Lirae scrambled to follow, clutching her tablet. We jumped, the shuttle's AI adjusting trajectory mid-leap to catch us. As we lifted away, I glimpsed the spire suite below, guards recovering, alarms wailing. We just made an enemy of the Emperor. Inside the shuttle, Senna took the controls, punching in coordinates for the nearest jump gate. Lirae sat beside me, breathing hard, eyes still on the fading glow of my hands. That was ether manipulation, raw and untrained. You shouldn't have been able to do that without instruction. I flexed my fingers, still tingling. I didn't mean to, I just wanted them to stop. She nodded slowly. Intent is key. The ether responds to will, shaped by focus. But without training, it's dangerous to you and everyone around you. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the jump gate, reality warping around us. Stars stretched into lines, then collapsed into new constellations. We emerged in deep space, far from Aethros Prime. Senna set course for Valandra Station, glancing back at me. You understand what just happened, don't you? You've declared yourself an enemy of the Empire. Kael will brand you a traitor, hunt you across every system. I met her gaze, a strange calm settling over me. Then we'd better make sure I'm worth the trouble. Valandra Station hung in the void like a skeletal hand, its once gleaming towers corroded and dark. It had been a research outpost during the first civilization's height, a place where heirs trained to wield the ether. Now it was a graveyard, forgotten by all but scholars and treasure hunters. Our shuttle docked at a decrepit airlock, its seal hissing as atmosphere equalized. Lirae led the way, her tablet projecting a faint map of the station's layout, cobbled together from fragmentary archives. The interior was cavernous and silent, halls lined with murals depicting figures wreathed in light, battling shadows that writhed and twisted. Dust hung in the air, undisturbed for generations. Admiral Senna kept her plasma pistol drawn, scanning for threats. I don't like this, it's too quiet. Lirae stopped before a sealed door marked with the same sigils that had appeared on my skin. She pressed her hand to the surface, but nothing happened. It requires attunement, someone with ether resonance. She looked at me expectantly. I stepped forward, pulse quickening, and placed my palm against the door. The sigils flared instantly, light racing along carved channels, and the door groaned open, revealing a circular chamber beyond. The training sanctum, Lirae called it. The walls were lined with crystalline nodes that pulsed faintly, and at the center stood a pedestal holding a sphere of swirling energy, an ether core, a concentrated fragment of the force that bound reality. Lirae's voice was reverent. This is it. If you can synchronize with the core, it will unlock your latent abilities. I approached the pedestal slowly, drawn by an instinct I didn't fully understand. The sphere hummed, resonating with the runes on my skin. I reached out, fingers brushing its surface, and the world exploded into light. Suddenly I was elsewhere, standing on a planet I'd never seen, beneath a sky of twin suns. Around me, figures moved, tall, graceful, their eyes glowing with inner fire. They spoke in the ancient tongue, and I understood every word. The ether is balance, heir. To wield it is to hold creation and entropy in equilibrium. Lose that balance, and you become the very chaos you seek to oppose. Visions cascaded through me, worlds born and dying, the rise and fall of civilizations, the first heirs standing against a primordial darkness that sought to unmake existence. I saw the Shroud for what it truly was, not an invading force but a symptom of decay, a wound in reality bleeding entropy. And I saw the throne, the arbiter designed to find those who could mend the wound. The visions ended abruptly and I stumbled back, gasping. Admiral Senna caught me, steadying. What did you see? I told them, words tumbling out in a rush. Lirae's face paled. Then the legends are true. The Shroud isn't just consuming space, it's unraveling the fabric of existence itself. Before we could process further, alarms shrieked. Red emergency lights flooded the chamber. Senna checked her comm, cursing. Imperial warships just dropped out of hyperspace. They tracked us. She pulled me toward the door. We need to move now. But as we ran, the station shuddered and a horrific screech echoed through the halls, a sound that shouldn't exist, that clawed at sanity. Through a shattered viewport I saw them, shroud beasts, writhing masses of void stuff latching onto the station's hull. They'd followed the Imperial fleet, or perhaps the fleet had brought them. Either way, we were trapped. We barricaded ourselves in an observation deck, Senna and Lirae rigging what defenses they could from salvaged equipment. The beasts tore through the station's outer layers, their forms shifting and impossible to focus on, eyes burning with cold malice. I felt the ether within me responding, urging action, and I closed my eyes, reaching for the power the core had awakened. It came like a flood, raw and overwhelming. I thrust my hands forward and light erupted, a barrier of shimmering energy that sealed the breached walls, holding the beasts at bay. But it wasn't enough. They pressed against the barrier, gnawing at it, and I felt every ounce of pressure as if they were gnawing on my soul. Sweat poured down my face. Senna fired through gaps, plasma bolts searing through void flesh, but for every beast she dropped, two more appeared. Lirae's voice cut through the chaos. Saren, you need to do more than defend, you need to reject them. The ether is order, the shroud is entropy. Assert that truth. I didn't fully understand, but I tried. I focused on the barrier, on the concept of realness, of existence affirming itself against non-existence. The light intensified, shifting from white to gold, and the beasts recoiled, screeching. One by one, they dissolved, unable to withstand the concentrated assertion of reality. When the last beast faded, I collapsed, every muscle screaming. Admiral Senna hauled me upright, grim satisfaction in her eyes. That's twice you've pulled off the impossible. Let's not make it a habit. We fled the station as it began to break apart, the Imperial warships closing in. Our shuttle barely cleared the debris field before the station imploded, consumed by the void it had once stood against. As we jumped to hyperspace, Lirae laid a hand on my shoulder, her expression both awed and worried. You're learning faster than any heir in the records, but power without control is a blade without a hilt. We need allies and time. Senna nodded, setting course for a neutral system. There are others who resist the Emperor's tyranny, scattered factions, frontier worlds tired of conscription and neglect. If we can unite them, show them what you represent." She trailed off, the implication clear. I wasn't just a fugitive anymore. I was a symbol, a rallying point. The throne's chosen, standing against both the Emperor's cruelty and the Shroud's oblivion. The weight of it threatened to crush me, but I thought of the visions, the heirs who came before, the balance they fought to preserve. I wasn't ready, but ready or not, I had a role to play. We arrived at Greyhold, a mining colony on the Empire's fringe where Admiral Senna had contacts among the resistance. The colony clung to an asteroid rich in rare minerals, its tunnels carved deep into stone. The locals were wary, faces hardened by generations of exploitation, but Senna's reputation opened doors. We were led to a meeting hall carved from raw rock where a dozen faction leaders waited, former officers, guild representatives, even a pirate captain with a cybernetic eye. Senna introduced me simply, "This is Saren Vey, chosen by the Throne of Aethros." The room erupted, half the leaders laughed, dismissive. A grizzled woman named Cora, who ran a fleet of scavenger ships, pointed at me with a prosthetic finger. "The throne's been dead for centuries. You expect us to believe some foundry rat is our savior?" I didn't blame her skepticism. I'd have laughed too a week ago, but Admiral Senna stepped forward, voice cutting through the noise. "I've seen him wield the Aether, seen him hold back the Shroud. The throne chose him because the galaxy is dying and we need someone who can fight on both fronts against Kael's tyranny and the Void's advance." Lirae activated her tablet, projecting recordings of the Valandra incident, the barrier of light, the dissolving beasts. The room fell silent, watching. When the footage ended, Cora's expression had shifted from mockery to cautious interest. "Say we believe you. What's your plan? Kael commands 1,000 warships and the Shroud swallows systems daily. How does one untrained orphan change that?" I met her gaze, forcing confidence I didn't feel. "By doing what the throne was built for, restoring balance. The Aether can counter the Shroud, but it requires more than one person. If we can find other potential heirs, awaken their resonance, we can push back the Void. And once we're no longer bleeding resources fighting an existential threat, we turn that strength against Kael." A younger leader, a tech specialist named Oren, leaned forward. "There are legends of other sanctums scattered across the outer reach. If we could locate them, train others." He trailed off, possibilities spinning out. Admiral Senna nodded. "We make ourselves a force the Emperor can't ignore, and we offer the people hope, something Kael has never provided." Slowly, tentatively, the factions agreed. Not all of them, not immediately, but enough to form a coalition. We had a start. Over the following weeks, we moved from system to system, gathering allies and resources. I trained under Lirae's guidance, learning to channel the Aether with precision rather than raw desperation. Each session left me drained but stronger, my control sharpening. We found 2 other potential heirs, a pilot named Jerk with latent resonance who could sense spatial distortions, and a medic called Thessa whose touch could accelerate healing through Aether manipulation. Neither matched my raw power, but they were proof the bloodline had survived, scattered and hidden. But Kael wasn't idle. He branded me the false heir, a heretic leading a rebellion of traitors. Propaganda flooded every comm channel, painting me as a chaos agent in league with the Shroud. Worse, he deployed the Crimson Echelon, elite hunters trained to kill rogue psionics. They struck at Greyhold 3 weeks after our first rally, breaching the colony's defenses in a brutal dawn raid. Alarms wailed as plasma fire tore through tunnels. Senna organized the evacuation while I fought alongside Jerk and Thessa, holding corridors against armored soldiers who fired without hesitation. An echelon commander confronted me in the central hub, a towering figure in crimson armor, wielding a blade that crackled with disruptor energy designed to shatter Aether constructs. He attacked with clinical precision, each strike forcing me back. I raised barriers, but his blade sliced through them like paper. He spoke through his helmet's vox, voice cold. "The Emperor sends his regards, false heir, your heresy ends here." I felt fear spike, but beneath it anger at the waste, the cruelty, the system that crushed people like me for daring to exist. I channeled that anger into focus and the Aether responded. Light coalesced into a spear in my hand, solid and burning bright. We clashed, his blade against my spear, energy screaming where they met. He was faster, better trained, but I had something he didn't, belief that what I fought for mattered. I saw openings in his stance, exploited them, drove him back step by step. Finally, I feinted high and struck low, the spear piercing his armor and pinning him to the wall. He slumped, helmet flickering. I didn't kill him, I couldn't. Instead, I pulled the spear free and ran, knowing mercy might haunt me. We fled Greyhold aboard a commandeered frigate, the colony burning behind us. It was a loss, but we'd bought time and our message had spread. The throne's chosen lived and he would not bow. Months blurred into a relentless cycle, fighting, fleeing, recruiting. Our coalition grew, swelling from dozens to thousands, then tens of thousands. Frontier colonies declared independence, rallying under the banner of the renewed throne. We became a movement, a promise that the galaxy could be more than endless war and exploitation. But the Shroud advanced faster, swallowing 3 systems in as many weeks. The Void's hunger was accelerating, and I knew we were running out of time. Lirae discovered coordinates for the Prime Sanctum, the heart of the first civilization's legacy, located in a region of space deemed impassable due to reality distortions. If we can reach it, she said, exhaustion lining her face, the records suggest it holds the means to stabilize the barriers, to halt the Shroud's advance permanently. Admiral Senna frowned, and if Kael learns of it, Lirae's smile was grim, he already has. His fleets are moving to secure it. If he claims the Sanctum, he gains control of the Aethos itself and the power to reshape the galaxy as he sees fit. We had no choice. We rallied every ship, every volunteer, and set course for the Prime Sanctum. The journey took us through fields of shattered planets, remnants of worlds consumed by the Shroud. The sights haunted me, drifting cities, frozen in their final moments, populations erased. Jarek piloted our flagship, a reclaimed dreadnought we'd named Hope's Resolve, with a steady hand despite the spatial distortions that twisted navigation. Thessa worked tirelessly in the medical bays, tending to wounded crew, her ether-enhanced healing the only thing keeping morale from collapsing. When we emerged at the Sanctum's location, we found an imperial armada waiting, over 300 warships arranged in a blockade, with Kael's command dreadnought at the center. The Sanctum itself was a structure of impossible geometry, a floating citadel of crystal and light that defied physics, anchored in the void. Admiral Senna's tactical display showed our forces outnumbered 5-1. She looked at me, jaw set. Orders? I stared at the Sanctum, feeling its pull, the resonance calling to me across the void. We break through, whatever it takes. The battle was chaos. Our ships dove into the Imperial lines, plasma lances and torpedoes lighting up the darkness. The Hope's Resolve shuddered under fire, shields flaring as enemy dreadnoughts targeted us. I stood on the bridge, focusing the ether, projecting barriers around our most vulnerable vessels, deflecting incoming fire. It was exhausting, like holding back an ocean, but I refused to falter. Jarek wove through the enemy formation with reckless grace, and Thessa coordinated damage control teams with calm precision. Slowly, impossibly, we carved a path toward the Sanctum. But Kael wasn't finished. His command ship launched boarding torpedoes, breaching our hull. Crimson Echelon poured into the corridors, and Senna led squads to repel them. I wanted to help, but Lirae grabbed my arm. You need to reach the Sanctum, that's the only thing that matters. She was right. I hated leaving them, but if I failed, everything we'd fought for meant nothing. Jarek rigged a shuttle, and the 3 of us, Jarek, Thessa, and I, launched toward the Sanctum while the battle raged around us. We docked at a crystalline platform, and the moment I stepped onto it, the Sanctum responded. Doors opened, revealing a central chamber vast beyond comprehension, walls lined with conduits pulsing with ether. At the center stood an altar, and above it, a rift, small, contained, leading into the Shroud itself. Lirae's voice was odd. This is it. The first heirs sealed the Shroud here, channeling the ether to maintain the barrier, but the seal is failing. I approached the altar, and the runes on my skin blazed. I understood instinctively what needed to be done. I had to reinforce the seal, channel enough ether to mend the rift permanently, but it would require more power than I possessed alone. Jarek and Thessa stepped beside me, hands extended. We're with you, Jarek said. Thessa nodded. Whatever it takes. I clasped their hands, and together we reached for the ether. Power flowed between us, amplifying, resonating. I directed it toward the rift, weaving light into the fabric of reality, stitching the wound closed. The Shroud resisted, void tendrils lashing out, but we held firm. Slowly, agonizingly, the rift began to shrink. The altar hummed, ancient mechanisms activating, lending their strength to ours. The chamber filled with blinding light. And then Kael was there. He'd abandoned his ship, crossing on a personal craft, and now he stood at the chamber's threshold, crown askew, eyes wild. "You think you can usurp me, you a nothing?" He raised a disruptor gauntlet, aiming at me. But Admiral Senna appeared behind him, bloodied but unbowed, plasma pistol pressed to his spine. "Stand down, Majesty." He froze, rage and fear warring on his face. Senna's voice was steel. "It's over. The throne never chose you, and it never will." With a final surge, the rift sealed. The light faded, leaving only the hum of stabilized conduits. The Shroud's advance halted, pushed back by the reinforced barrier. Across the galaxy, sensors would register the change. The bleeding stopped, systems reclaimed. Kael slumped, defeated, and Senna disarmed him. She looked at me, a tired smile breaking through. "You did it." I shook my head, exhausted. "We did it, all of us." In the weeks that followed, the remnants of Kael's regime crumbled. Without the Shroud as an existential threat to justify his tyranny, dissent exploded into full revolt. Frontier worlds declared independence, and even core systems demanded reform. Kael stood trial not by my hand but by a council of representatives from across the coalition. I didn't watch. Justice wasn't mine to claim, and I had other work. The throne, when I finally returned to Aethros Prime, no longer blazed. It pulsed gently, a steady heartbeat, acknowledging me but not demanding. I stood before it, Lirae and Senna flanking me, and addressed the gathered assembly, a mix of old nobles, resistance leaders, and common folk. "I'm not your emperor," I said. "The throne chose me to restore balance, not to rule. What we build now, we build together. No more foundry rats, no more forgotten stations. We honor every life, every voice." The throne's light flared in agreement, and I felt for the first time that maybe we had a chance. Years later, I stood on the observation deck of a restored station, watching ships move peacefully between worlds. Jerk commanded a patrol fleet, ensuring the Shroud's remnants stayed contained. Thessa ran a network of healing centers across the frontier. Admiral Senna retired, though she still advised the council. Lirae continued her research, uncovering more of the first civilization's legacy. And me, I remained the throne's steward, not its master, training new heirs, mending what remained broken, and remembering the day a goblet shattered on marble and a gutter-born wretch learned he could become starlight.